Oh, hey, a viewer. Yay. Well, I'm hoping people are actually seeing this. I'm not sure if this is working out right. I've not done a Hangout on air before, just the regular Hangout. So I'm hoping you all can hear and see me. If you could either just leave a message on the event page or on the chat here, if you guys have access to that, let me know if it's working or not. It's a little weird not having other people at the bottom talking with me. Oh, good. I got confirmation that people can hear me. Just a little surreal not having any kind of feedback when you do this. So with that in mind, I'm just going to go ahead and get started. I'm Meredith Martin, and I am going to be talking today about Chrome apps and extensions, which has lately become one of my favorite things to talk about. I have discovered tons of wonderful Chrome extensions and apps that I can use with my students or even for myself. I'm a K-6 technology integration specialist, computer teacher, techie, geek, whatever you want to call me, and I teach in Mantua, New Jersey. I'm going to jump over first and pull up just some quick slides here to get started, and then we're going to jump onto my desktop here and have a look at some of these awesome extensions. So let me jump over here. Okay. All right, so we're talking about Chrome apps and extensions today for our hour 7 of the 10 hours of GAFE goodness. I always love to share this lovely comic. This pretty much brings home the browser wars to me. Started out my career using Internet Explorer because basically there wasn't anything else. Then switched over to Firefox and loved it for ages, and then finally discovered Chrome, which completely blew me away, especially with all of the great tools that we have that we can access with it. So we're going to talk about two different things today. We're going to talk about apps and extensions both. Apps are basically applications and websites that are going to open right in your browser. It's basically a bookmark or a quick link to a website that you use on a regular basis. Extensions are different. Extensions kind of run in the background, and what they do is they affect what's on the web pages that you're accessing. Extensions tend to be my favorite as opposed to apps, but we'll take a look at a couple of each. In order to use the apps and extensions, you do need to sign into Chrome. You can sign in with your Google account. On the right-hand side of your Chrome browser, you're going to see 3 little lines, and that's going to be where you click to access your settings, and about 3/4 of the way down, it'll ask you to sign in if you're not already signed in. Once you are signed in, then you can go ahead and begin adding apps and extensions. What's really neat about this is that if you're signed into Chrome, all of your bookmarks, your apps, your extensions, your settings, passwords, whatever, all of those things will travel with you from computer to computer if you sign in on them using the Chrome browser. So I don't have to worry anymore if I'm presenting somewhere else and they have a different computer for me to use. I can't hook up my own laptop. I can still sign into Chrome on that computer and be able to access all of my bookmarks, my tools, my extensions, everything I could possibly need. Once you are signed in, the next step is to go to the Chrome Web Store. And if you're on a Chromebook, the easiest way is to click on your apps launcher on the Chromebook, and then you're going to go to the Chrome Web Store button. If you're on a PC, a Mac, or other device, then it's easily accessed in your browser. Once you've signed into Chrome, on the left-hand side, you're going to see a little grid here called Apps. When you click on it, it will open up an apps page, and you just click on the store, and that will take you directly to the Chrome Web Store. I'm going to jump out of this for a minute. I'll come back to the resources in a moment or two. Let me just jump back here, make sure that everything is going okay. All right, everything looks good so far. So what I'm going to do next is I want to show you some of my favorites. I have basically been collecting a lot of great extensions and apps. I have to give credit to Mike Murata. He started me off on this obsession, and he has a collection of even more great Chrome apps and extensions. He specializes in assistive technology, so I will have a link to his page at the end of the session. So we're going to jump back and continue screen sharing here. All right, so right now, my browser looks a little crazy because up here at the top, I have gone ahead and enabled most of my favorite extensions that I'm going to use. As you add extensions, they'll appear here on the browser bar. And to access them, you would just click on the one you want. Now, the first extension that I'm going to share is one that I can't live without because of the fact that I have all of these extensions. And that's this one right here. This is a tool called Extensity. I will have a link to all of these different extensions and apps at the end of the session, so don't worry about trying to jot it down or find out where they are. I will add the link to our page after we finish up the session. But what Extensity does is it lets me go in and it lets me choose which apps and extensions I want to enable at any given time. If they're grayed out, they are currently turned off, and the ones that are bright white are the ones that are enabled at the moment. This is very handy if you have a list as ridiculous as this. I do not recommend having a list this long. A lot of this I keep on here because I need to share it when I present. And there are a good handful that I use on a regular basis, but my browser bar does not normally look this crazy. So Extensity is definitely needed if you're going to be adding a lot of different extensions and apps to your browser. So moving on from Extensity, which is my lifesaver, the next one I want to share is this one right over here. This is my ad block, and ad block has been a favorite for years. If you're not familiar with it, you install AdBlock and it blocks all of those annoying little advertisements on web pages. It will block the text-based ads, it will block the image-based ads, it will block video ads, and I also believe that it will block the advertisements at the beginning of YouTube videos as well. I haven't tested that yet, but someone mentioned that to me the other day and I thought that would be a wonderful thing. Now, there are a couple different ad block tools out there. This one is just regular ad block, not ad block plus. And again, this is going to block all of the ads on the websites for you. We're setting up Chromebooks at school for our kids, and one of the very first extensions that I push out to all of the student Chromebooks is ad block so that we can avoid those distracting ads with the let's just say the well-endowed animated women bouncing up and down on the side of the page as my students are trying to research. So AdBlock is a definite go-to app for me. Now, I'm going to jump over to, this is always fun when I don't have a very large address bar. I'm going to show you some great tools for your students in terms of reading web pages, doing research, taking notes, things like that. So first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to come to CNN, which not my favorite site in the world, but it's a good example of some of these. So I'm just going to choose an article, and I'm pretending here that I'm a student. I'm going out to research. And if I scroll down this page, the first thing I'm going to realize is that there's an awful lot of clutter on this page. And if I'm an elementary school student or even a high school student, this is really, really distracting. So what I want to do is kind of clean it up to make it easier to read. And for that, there's a wonderful app called Readability, and that's this little red armchair here. So I'm going to click on Readability, and I have a couple of choices, and I'm going to choose Read Now. Now, it'll take a moment as it processes, but then it's going to give me this new page. Look at how much cleaner this is for your students. So instead of having to worry about all those little auto-playing videos, all of the distractions along the side, I now have a nice, clean page that will make it a lot easier for my students to read. Over here on the left, I have some options. My favorite one right here is the capital A here. This will change the appearance of the article. I can choose different fonts if I find a different font is easier for me to read. I can change my contrast between day and night. So if you find that white text on black works better, one click will go ahead and change that for you. I can also adjust the size of the text and the width of the margins. So all of this is going to make it very, very easy for my students to read these articles without being distracted, without being tempted to click out of something onto something that's not related to what they're researching. I also have my share options here. If my students have a page, they can email it, they can send it to a Kindle, they can download it as an EPUB, they can print, and if your district allows it, there's also options to post it to Facebook or tweet it. I don't usually worry about those because, as I said, I teach elementary school. It's not something our students have access to. So that one is our Readability extension, and it's a wonderful, wonderful tool. So my next one is probably one of my favorites of all time when it comes to doing student research. A lot of times for my students, they don't necessarily need to read the whole article, but they need to get an idea of what it's about. So they want a summary of the article. So in this case, I'm going to use a tool called TLDR. If you're not familiar with the term, TLDR stands for too long, didn't read it. So I'm here on this web page. I have this long article. And this could be a bit much for my second or third graders, or even some of my older students. So I'm going to come up here and click on TLDR. And it's going to take a moment to process. And now it's going to go ahead and give me a summary of that article. So I went from this huge long article over here to this nice short summary that's a lot easier for my students to understand. I can also have instant differentiation for my students using this tool, because now along the side, I can choose the length of my summary all the way back to the original length. So this is a wonderful tool for your students, and it's really going to make researching and reading web articles a lot easier for them. Next up, let's see which one we want to take a look at next. I showed you in Readability that you could change the contrast of your screen. There is another one called High Contrast. And this will go ahead and let's see if this will behave today. The other day it was being a little fussy. I can invert the color. I can choose increase contrast, grayscale, inverted colors, inverted grayscale, yellow on black. Now, I'm not a fan of yellow on black, but for some people it may help. So this is all in the high contrast tool. So I'm going to go ahead and turn that off because I don't need that right now. And what I'm going to share next is a very simple tool called BLine Reader. And I like BLine Reader, again, for doing research and reading articles on the web. I know a lot of my students, particularly my students who are in special ed, and honestly, even myself sometimes, particularly if I'm tired, if I'm trying to read an article online and follow the lines as I go through the page, a lot of times I find my eyes skipping ahead or skipping backwards or losing track of where I am in the sentence or the paragraph. And if I'm having trouble with it, then I know my students are definitely going to be having trouble with it. So this tool is called BLine Reader. And I'm going to go ahead and turn on BLine Reader. And you'll notice that my text is now colored in a gradient. By default, it starts out with the black gradient going to red, then back to black, and then to blue, and then continues on. This makes it easier for myself and my students to follow along with the lines, and it makes it harder for me to lose track of where I am on the page. Now, I've had some people look at that and go, wow, the red is really distracting. My eyes are going to jump right to the red. Good point. Over here, I have a little gear on my page, and this is going to give me some other options. So right now, my theme is the bright theme. That's this one with the red and the blue. I can change it to a dark theme, blues, a gray gradient, inverted, which is not behaving right now. And then, of course, there's custom, and you can set your own custom colors if you don't like any of the options that are there. Now, one of the other really awesome features of this tool is right here in settings. And that's this first option here called Open Dyslexic Font. If you're not aware of it, the Open Dyslexic Font is a font created for obviously people who have dyslexia, and it's designed to make it easier for them to read. It has gotten rave reviews. It is a free open source font that you can actually download. But right here in the BLine Reader, I have the option to turn on Open Dyslexic Font for this web page, and it will automatically change the font on this page to the Open Dyslexic Font. There is actually an extension just for Open Dyslexic Font. The main difference is that the Open Dyslexic extension changes everything in your browser to this Open Dyslexic Font, including your menus, your tab titles, things like that, which is great, except the only way to turn it off is to turn off the extension itself, which can be a hassle. A little easier now that we have the ability to turn things on and off easily with Extensity. Before I discovered Extensity, I would access my extensions by going into my settings and then to my extensions and turning them on and off there. But just having the option here to be able to turn that on and off for an individual page is very, very useful. I'm going to go ahead and turn that off for now. All right. A lot of times I want my students to keep track of the websites that they're visiting, and they need a link to jot down to be able to get back to the site later. Or if I want to share a website out with my students and I need them to type it in, although it's very hard to see right now with my tiny little menu bar here, if I keep going, there is a humongous, long, complicated web address here for my students to type in. Now, my first graders are not going to be able to do that. However, I have a handy little extension up here called the goo.gol URL shortener. Now, there's a lot of URL shorteners out there, Bitly and TinyURL and a whole bunch of others. But the goo.gol URL shortener is one of my favorites, obviously because it's a Google tool. And when I click on it, it's going to go ahead and generate a shortened URL that I can then copy and paste. I can write it down. It is case sensitive, so that is something you need to be aware of. But then here's one of my favorite bits here. I can now click QR code, and it will automatically generate a QR code for me for that particular link. So if I'm working on putting together some resources for a homework page, or I want to get some tutorials together on a reference sheet for my kids, if I find some web pages that I think would be good resources for them, I can come here, create the short URL, create my little QR code, and then just copy and paste that URL code onto the document that I'm going to share with the students, and they will automatically have that to be able to scan it with their device and jump right to the resources. All right, so one of the things my kids are always asking me is, how do you spell blank? And my response to them is always, I'm not a dictionary, except on Halloween when I actually do dress up as a dictionary. And for one day, they're allowed to ask me how to spell words. This next tool is not technically a spelling dictionary, but it's wonderful for finding definitions of words that students might come across and are unsure of. So I'm here in my web page and I'm reading through the article, and I'm going to go ahead and highlight one of these words on my page. I don't know this word. Up here on my menu bar, I've enabled Google Dictionary. So I'm going to go ahead and click on Google Dictionary, and it's going to pull up the definition. It's going to give me some synonyms for it. It'll give me, this one has several different options, nouns and verbs here, some web definitions, and then here's my favorite part. While this doesn't happen for every single word, for a lot of the words, you're going to see a little speaker icon. And if you click on the speaker icon, it's going to go ahead and pronounce the word for you. Right? So if you have a student who's never heard a word pronounced, they're not sure how to pronounce it, this is a great way to get them to hear the word as well as see the definitions that go along with it. So that one's Google Dictionary, which is a great little tool. So I want to continue on with some other very useful Google tools. We are a Google Apps district, and our students all have Google accounts, and I've been very happy to get them started using Google Drive and sharing and collaborating. And there are a couple of really good extensions to help you out when using Google Drive. So perhaps I want my students to be able to save this particular article in their Google Drive so that they can come back and refer to it later. Perhaps it's the end of the period, maybe they're not able to bookmark something on the particular device they're using. So there is a handy little tool here called Save to Google Drive. And all I need to do is click, and it's going to take that page, it's going to scan through it, and it's going to download it into my Google Drive. Now, by default, it saves it as an image file, a PNG file. I'm going to go ahead and cancel out of this for the moment. But what I discovered is if you right-click on this and come into Options, you now have a choice as to how you want to save that page. So I can get an image of the entire page, just what's visible, the source code, a web archive, or here's what totally made my day, Google document. The problem with a PNG is that because it's an image file, my students can't go in and copy and paste text. They can't make any edits. They can't take notes on it. By saving it as a Google document, it's going to take that web page, convert all the text into a Google document, and then my students will have access to it at any time in their Google Drive. So they'll be able to go in, they'll be able to save it, edit it, copy, paste, whatever they need to do with it, all just by clicking the one button up here. In addition to that, I now have a context menu if I find an image that I'd like. So let me see. So I'm going to right-click on the image, and you'll notice I have a bunch of my extensions available here also. If I go to Save to Google Drive, I can save the link to that image to Google Drive, or I can save the image itself to Google Drive, which is a wonderful thing if you're online and you're trying to find images to use. Now, I also usually have my students save the link to Google Drive because that way they'll be able to find that link when they want to go in and provide a citation for whatever images they've chosen to use. So that's my Save to Google Drive tool. There's a similar tool that I was using before I discovered that I could go in and change my setting to save it as a Google Doc, and that's this one, which is my Save Text to Google Drive. If I click on this one, it's going to go ahead and create a text-only version of my article. It's going to give me the link right up here at the top so that I can have that for any citations. And then as I scroll down, I can see I have the article here. What's really neat about this is that I can tag the article with different tags. That's going to make it a lot easier for me when I go back into my Google Drive later to find it. I'll be able to search by tags and very quickly find what I'm looking for. Once I click Save, it will automatically save this into my Google Drive as a document that I can then go in and work with later. All right, moving right along. I have 50 million of these things. I don't even have all of them turned on. This is another favorite tool of mine. This is called Split Screen. And I find a lot of times that my students aren't very good at jumping back and forth between tabs. So they go to a tab and then they jump back to another one, and all of a sudden they've lost their train of thought, or they forgot what they were going to take a note on. I try to avoid having my kids just copy and paste chunks from web pages. So what I want them to be able to do is read the web page and take notes on it in their own words. And for that, I'm going to use the Split Screen tool. This is going to go ahead and give me two separate little browser screens here in one tab. Over here on the left is a note-taking page, and I can just go ahead and type in whatever. On the other side is my browser, and I can jump right into my browser here, go into an article, and then I can begin taking notes on what I'm reading without flipping back and forth between screens. Now, in addition to taking notes, I can also use this second page here on the side as another browser window. If I want to compare articles or look at two different websites at once, I can use this instead of for notes. I can just go right to another web page and have two web pages up simultaneously. What's nice about split screen is that although the note taker is not very full featured, it's basically just a blank page to write on. If I close out of my split screen tab and go back to it, it automatically saves whatever I have in here until I go in and delete it. So this will stay here. I can then later copy and paste that into a Google document, use it as my notes, as my basis to start writing. My one issue with split screen that I really wish it did, unfortunately, because the way the extension uses frames, websites like Google Docs and Google Slides and Google Sheets are not going to work in these little half browser windows. That's the biggest downside to it. But if you're just using it for taking notes, it's wonderful. So what you can also do with this, you see some arrows up here. I can have it vertical or horizontal, whatever works best for me. So that one's my split screen extension. All right. This next one is ScreenLeap, and ScreenLeap is a neat little screen sharing tool. So I can go in and I can capture a region, I can capture a window, but here's one of my favorite things. I can share my browser and I can broadcast my browser. So I'm going to go ahead and click start there. I don't have an account right now, so I'm not going to bother signing in. But once you're signed in, it will give you the ability to share your screen with anybody else, kind of like a little mini Google Hangout where we're sharing our screens here. And just very easily do that from your browser. So this one is ScreenLeap. I am a Symbaloo junkie. I don't know if anybody else uses Symbaloo, but if you haven't seen Symbaloo, it's a great bookmarking site. And with Symbaloo, there's an EDU version that is free for teachers. Always love free. So I'm going to go ahead into my account to show you real quickly what this looks like so you know what I'm talking about when I show you the extension. This lets me create little individual tiles that are bookmarks. And then I can create as many of these, what they call Webmixes, as I want. Again, 50 million of them. This is terrible because it lets me be a digital hoarder just as much as Pinterest does. I can then embed this Webmix into a website. Pretty much my entire website runs off this. I can come in and just click on one of these tiles to add another one, but it's much, much easier with my little Symbaloo bookmarker here. When I get to a website I want to add to one of my Webmixes, all I need to do is click on the Symbaloo bookmarker. I can change the name. I can show the text on the little tile, choose my color, choose my icon, and then choose which Webmix I want to add it to. So I can do all of that just with my little bookmarker tool, kind of like my little Pinterest button over here. Right here next to Pinterest is another awesome tool. If you have not seen Snagit by TechSmith yet, you are really, really missing out. The TechSmith Snagit tool is kind of like a really scaled down version of their Camtasia software, which lets you record what's going on your screen. With my Snagit extension, I have a couple different options. First off, I have my photo option, so I can take screenshots of whatever's on my screen, either what's visible, scrolling down through a whole page, or a region. So I'm going to go ahead and grab a region of this page. And I can go ahead and click the camera icon to take a picture of it. And now it's going to open it up in this little editing menu. I can change the name of it. And then over here is my favorite part. I have some annotation tools. I can come in and I can add arrows to my images. I can add shapes to my images, and I can add text to my images. I do a lot of tutorial creations for my coworkers in my district, and this has been a wonderful tool when I need to take screenshots of different steps on using an app or a website, and then be able to add the arrows and the text and the shapes to highlight what I want them to look at. Now, the best part about this is that it saves it automatically into my Google Drive. And if I click on Library here, here's my library. It's also in my Google Drive. It saves it in a folder called TechSmith in my Google Drive. So I then have immediate access to all of my little images that I have taken using this tool. I can also come over here, and I'm not actually going to record right now because I think with the Hangout going, it'd probably be a bit of overkill for my computer. But I can also choose screen, and I can record what I'm doing on my screen and create little tutorial videos. I love this for myself for being able to create tutorials, and it's also wonderful for the students. If you really want to have a way for your students to share what they've learned and to show that they've mastered something, have them create their own tutorial video on it. This is a wonderful tool. It's completely free, and everything saves automatically to your Google Drive, which is perfect for a Google Apps district. All right, moving right along. This next one over here, funny looking one, is called OneTab, and I love OneTab. I've only been using it for a couple of weeks now, and I honestly don't know how I lived without it before. I am a tab junkie. It is not unusual for me to have 15, 20, or more tabs open at a time. And that gets really, really confusing sometimes when I'm trying to find what I'm looking for. It gets very cluttered. Also tends to slow my browser down a little. So when my tabs get crazy out of control, I click OneTab, and it's going to go ahead, take all these tabs, and create a list of them here. Now, if I close out, it's going to save all of these, and I can then open up OneTab at any future time and reopen all of these. I can click on them individually to reopen them, or click Restore All to reopen all of those tabs I was using. But that's not all that it does. That's handy enough, but I want to show you my favorite part of this. I've collected these 4 tabs, and I can restore, I can delete, but here's what makes it awesome. I can share this as a web page. If you are working with your students and you want to create a pre-vetted list of links for your students to access, pull them all up in tabs, click OneTab, so you get your nice page here with all of your tabs, and then you're going to click Share as Web Page. All right, this is going to give you a public web page that you can share with your students. You can copy the link from your address bar or use the little QR code. So this is a really handy tool to be able to create just those pre-vetted lists of links and share them out easily, whether it's with students, whether it's a bunch of things you want to share with a colleague or a friend. OneTab is a great way to do it. So when you share it out, they will come to this page here, and then they can click on the links to see whatever you have bookmarked for them. So let me go ahead and restore all of my tabs here. All right. So I've got them back now, and we can continue on. My next one is for those of you who are Amazon junkies and can't live without your Kindle. The Send to Kindle button is fabulous. If I am on a web page and it's an article I want and I want to read it later, I can save it directly to my Kindle. So if you have an Amazon Kindle, whether it's a regular Kindle or a Kindle Fire or a Paperwhite, doesn't matter. link this to your Kindle account, and it will automatically format and send the article you're on to your Kindle so that you can read it later. Very, very handy function. Next up is Hangouts, and I'm sure everybody knows how we use our Hangouts. This is just a very quick way to access your Hangouts, to create a new one, to enter a Hangout that's going on. That's a quick little link up there. Over here, we have Awesome Screenshot. This is very similar to Snagit. So if I go ahead and click on Awesome Screenshot, I don't need my changelog there. I have a whole bunch of options here. I can capture what's visible. I can capture my selection. There is a premium option if you want to pay for it. I've never found any real need to pay for it. But what's really neat is there's a delayed capture on here. So if you need to actually go onto the website and, for example, click on a menu item to see the drop-down menu, you can go ahead and choose delayed capture and set a time. All right, so now I have time to get set up, and it's going to take that picture for me. Once I have the picture, I then have my cropping options. I have a whole bunch of other annotation options to play with a paintbrush. And again, this is something that your students can use as they're creating projects and presentations. If you want them to show what they've learned, this is a wonderful tool for that. So I'm going to say done. And now that I have my screenshot, I can just have it temporary. I can save it to Digo. I can save it on Google Drive, save it locally, the clipboard, print the screenshot, and all of that good stuff. So again, this one's a very powerful tool. Annotate. This is called Awesome Screenshot. So let me go ahead and close that out. This one is Google Drive Quick Create. I don't use this one very much personally because I always have my Google Drive open if I'm at work, and often even when I'm not at work. But this is going to give me the option to just very quickly create a document, spreadsheet, presentation, or drawing without having to open a new tab, go to my drive, choose what type of document I want. I can just click on this and very quickly open up a new item. So I'm going to say, go ahead and give me a document. And now I am right here in my Google document, able to go ahead and edit. Oh, goody, and perfect timing. What popped up next? This is a tool called Read and Write for Google. And Read and Write for Google is a fantastic tool. This gives you so many options for your students. There is a paid version, but they do offer a free pro version for teachers, which is fantastic. And with this, I get some highlighting options. This works with your Google Drive. I'm going to jump back here to CNN. On any web page that you see this little green box in your address bar, you can then open this up in your browser. I can then come in. I'm going to choose my blue highlighter. I'm going to highlight that. Let me go ahead and highlight that. And I can go in and highlight whatever I want. Now, once I've done that, I can collect my highlights. I can sort them. And it's going to create a Google document for me that pulls out all of my highlighted areas, gives me a link to the article, and shows me what account I was using when I saved this. So this is a wonderful feature. If your students are researching and taking notes, this takes a lot of the work out of it for them. So I'm going to jump back here for a minute. With this tool, I have hover speech. This will, if I turn this on, this will actually start reading the text to the students as I hover my mouse over it. I'm not signed into my pro version right now, but it does have a little dictionary. And my favorite thing is this one, especially for my younger students and my special ed students. This is a picture dictionary. So if I find a word on the page that I don't know, I can highlight it and click on picture dictionary, and it will try to find a picture or several pictures that describe what the word is. So for my students who are not good readers and the dictionary tool isn't really going to help them, the picture dictionary is a great way for them to be able to do that. Now there's a ton of other features here in Read and Write for Google, and I highly recommend going to their website, getting a free pro account. I will provide the link to that in our session at the end. And just experimenting and seeing what this can do. This is a fabulous research tool for your students. All right. I love accessibility tools, and one of my favorites is a screen reader tool. I have a lot of students who have difficulty reading or have vision problems. A couple years ago, we had a legally blind student, and we paid a fortune for screen reader software for this student. Nowadays, I can use any one of a number of screen readers that are completely free for my students. So I have a couple of them up here. This one is Convert Text to Speech. This one, again, another different one. I'm going to highlight part of this, and I'm just going to right-click on it. I have Speak It and I have Speak Text. The one I tend to use most often is Speak It, but really you can play around with these and find whatever one works for you. Okay, so that's going to read it to me. But what I like about this one, I'm going to jump over here into my settings. I'm going to come over to my extensions menu, and I'm going to scroll down till I get to Speak It. Yes, I know you're still reading. All right, where are you hiding in here? Here we are. Here's my Speak It tool. And if I come here to my settings, I have an options link. I'm going to choose options, and in here I can come in and choose my text-to-speech engine. I can adjust my volume level. And here's the best part, I can adjust the speaking rate. If I found that rate of speech too slow or too fast, I can very easily adjust it. Now here's the part you don't want to show your students, because guaranteed they will spend an entire class period choosing which accent they want it read in. So let's see. All right, and trust me, they will spend forever playing with this. So I usually don't show this option to my students because I know they will spend forever just trying to find the perfect voice. So that's there in my settings for that particular extension. Hide you. I don't need you open right now. Okay. Hopefully, at least some of you use Padlet. This is a wonderful tool for creating little interactive note boards, kind of like little pushpin boards that you can use. And there is a Padlet Mini extension here. This will post it to Padlet for me. If I click on this, it will go ahead and I can create multiple Padlet pages, and I can choose which page I want to post it to. So now I can click on View, and in here I can find the links to the web pages that I was visiting. I pre-populated it with a couple of them, and here's my new one that I just added. I can share this out. I can make this a collaborative board with my students. Again, this is a great way for them to collect their resources so that they can go back in and find them again, to be able to get the citation information for them. All of this is available here in Padlet, just with one click of the little Padlet Mini extension. Right. Next up, we have Note Anywhere. And this is just going to give me a little Post-it note that I can put on that page. And then I can come back later and see my Post-its on the page. I love Post-it notes. I love leaving myself notes. This way, if I want to come back to an article later and look at something, I can mark it here. Let's see, which one are you? This one is another handy one, similar to OneTab. This will copy all of the URLs from the tabs you have open to the clipboard. So if you want to send an email or add a bunch of links to a document, you can take your open tabs here, click on this, and it will copy those to the clipboard, and then you can just paste them in wherever you want. Next up, I have two different timer options. A lot of time timers come in handy in class. I have one-click timer, and I can go ahead and set that timer for however long I want here. And then this is my Omnibox timer. This one's going to just show me my options here. I should have a little button in here, but since my menu bar's closed up so much, we're not going to worry about it. Let's go ahead. No, I don't want 60 minutes. Turn that off. Okay. Getting close to the end, so I want to show you just a few more before we wrap up. This one is Black Menu for Google. Google has virtually unlimited amounts of different tools for you to use. And with Black Menu, I can go in and have access to a whole bunch of different Google tools right here in this little drop-down menu. I can go to More, and I can find other tools to work, but the Black Menu is going to give me just the easiest way to go in and find some of these great options. All right, next up, this one is really handy. This is night reading mode. I have a very bad habit of playing on my computer in bed before I go to sleep at night, and first thing in the morning, roll over, pick up the Chromebook, and go see what's new in the world. I also tend to get migraines, which is not a good combination with a backlit screen at night. So with this extension, I can go in and turn on night reading mode, and it's going to basically invert the colors here and make it a lot easier on my eyes when I'm reading. Now I can turn it on and off. I can choose it to always be on or off for particular pages. I can adjust my brightness and contrast, and I can also set it to auto so that from 7 p.m. to 6 a.m., it will automatically, without me having to do anything, go ahead and switch me to night reading mode. That way I don't even have to worry about clicking the buttons anymore. Love this. It has been wonderful for my eyes and for my head. Jump around a little bit over here. Next up is EasyBib. I talk a lot about citations because that's one thing I really want my kids to focus on, is being good digital citizens. And the EasyBib tool is very, very useful. This not only lets you cite it on EasyBib if you have an EasyBib account, but it also gives you a credibility rating for a website. And this is amazing for the kids, especially if you're trying to explain to them how not everything you read on the internet is true. They have a hard time grasping that. And this is going to go in and just give me an idea of how credible is this website? How likely is the information on here to be good information, to be factual? This way, my students can start looking at the websites and starting to think about where biases might be, why certain websites might not be particularly factual. So great little tool here, both for the citation ability and for that website credibility option. All right. Couple other good tools here. This one is called Annotary, and Annotary lets me save pages and add notes to them. I can add highlights to a page. Save my page here, add some notes to it. And then what this does is on the Annotary website, I now have all of these little clippings here that I can use for my research. So if I'm a student doing research, the Annotary tool is going to let me go in, highlight text, add my own notes to things, give me those links. I can create different collections for different research projects. All of this very easily here in Annotary, which is a free site for you and your students. All right, so we are just about out of time for today. So I'm going to jump back here to our Google Hangouts page and turn off the screen sharing. And what I'm going to do is very quickly turn on the Q&A. I'm hoping this will work out. If you guys have any questions, please feel free to go in and add those questions, and I will see what I can do. Oh, I see some already. Good. Oh, I see a question from Sherry over here. She says, so your elementary students log into Chrome and GAFE? Yes, they do. We've been using the Google Apps for Education for a couple of years now. Every student has their own individual username and password to sign in. And then we are just getting Chromebooks in. We're going 1-to-1 in grades 3 through 6, and then eventually grades 2 through 6. And that's going to let our students automatically be signed into Chrome when they sign into the Chromebooks, which will let them go ahead and add these apps and extensions to their devices. For the students, I've gone in through my Google Apps admin panel, and there's an option to whitelist different apps and extensions. So for my students, they're only allowed to install apps and extensions that I've pre-approved. However, my teachers know they have the capability to just shoot me an email or give me a call if they find one that is not on the list yet, and I will go ahead and add it to the list for them. Any other questions while I have this open? Okay, I'm going to assume then that we don't have any other questions. So I want to wish everybody a wonderful rest of your evening. When I hang up here, I'm going to go ahead and post the links both to the presentation and to my extension list of links for you. And I will very quickly jump back here, screen share one last time. And this way, if anybody has the urge to jot it down, let me go ahead and pull this up full screen again for a minute. All right, this is the link to the presentation. It's just these few slides here at the very beginning. It is case sensitive. This will be the link to the Chrome extension collection. I also have a link to Mike Murata's Chrome apps page. Please take the time to go in and look at what he's got. There's some amazing stuff that he has collected. You can also contact me, my email address, my Twitter, and my website. I am always happy to chit-chat, to answer questions, to collaborate on projects. So feel free to go ahead and shoot me a line at any time. So I'm going to wrap things up now. Hopefully you guys found that useful. And we will be back not too long from now for our next hour of GAFE goodness. Thanks for coming tonight, and I will talk to you all later. Good night.